Hi, Roots and Rings family. Welcome to our episode 2. Today we'll be discussing attachment styles and how they evolve as we grow.
Yes. So with attachment styles, obviously comes in love languages, practicing discernment, emotional regulation. We will start off with what the attachment styles are, and that's anxiously attached, avoidant, secure, and fearful avoidant, which is coined like the disorganized. Obviously, the goal is to get to feeling secure in your relationship. That's the end goal.
Word.
Right?
Word.
At some point along the journey of your life, like your goal should be, if you want to be in a relationship or a connection, it doesn't even have to be romantic. Some people struggle in familial dynamics and friendships with anxious attachment or avoidant. And the goal should really be secure.
Yeah, that definitely should be everyone's goal, but like everything in life, it's easier said than done. But I definitely think that it starts with being self-aware. And I think it's also important to understand what your attachment style is, because it helps you understand how you relate to your family and friends, how you work with people in the workplace and just like in the world, and also how you solve problems for yourself and for other people. So I think that there, like those quizzes and stuff like that are available. I think that it's important to just take some time just to scope it out, just to read the things and have an honest conversation with yourself about where you fall. So that way, if it's where you don't want to be, you can work on it, right? Because like we said, the goal for everyone should be secure. I think that's definitely the healthiest place.
Yeah. And a person gets to a place of security by knowing themselves. So if you're entering a connection of any type, you ask yourself, like, how am I viewing this connection? What energy am I bringing in, right? Am I viewing it through like my past traumas or my wounding? And it's important. Some people don't even know that they have past trauma. You know, as a therapist and a coach, I ask in the beginning of our sessions, like, have you experienced any major traumas in your life? And a lot of the times people don't even know what they've experienced is trauma. So it's important to do like soul searching, that we call it. It's important to know how you're stepping into something, what energy you're bringing, what you want to get out of the dynamic, what connection you want to foster, what type of connection you want to foster. So yeah,
absolutely.
For sure.
And I think that even though the motivator may be for relationships, I think that at the end of the day, it's just for yourself, honestly, to just like understand what that is. But I think that it's hard for some people to identify what their traumas are, because when we think of the word trauma, we think of like a car accident.
Right. The worst possible thing.
Or like, something like physically traumatic. But we don't even realize that it can be the smallest thing that your brain, when you're a child, like just doesn't forget. And then it comes up in different places as you grow. And if you're not aware how that trauma shows up, or the trigger of the trauma shows up in your life, it's going to keep happening. It's just going to keep happening. So,
and Nina brought up a really good point. Like, regardless of the type of relationship you want to enter, your relationship to self sets the tone. And you can be anxiously attached within yourself. You can be fearful, avoidant, and disorganized, and just avoidant straight up within yourself. Because what that looks like is you'll say things like, oh, he's so emotionally unintelligent, or she lacks emotional regulation. She's just all over the place. She's sloppy. She's over emotional. That's what your attachment style is coming out like within yourself.
It's data. It's definitely like data.
Feedback, data. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that, like, just to speak on the emotional intelligence, there's several aspects of intelligence. Like, you can be book smart, you can be street smart, you can have a way with words and the gift of gab, and you can basically like sell water to a well, right? But you can also be like emotionally intelligent, and like that shows up in different ways. So like if you would consider yourself an intelligent person, I invite you to think about what aspects do you consider yourself intelligent in, and really have an honest conversation with yourself. And maybe you're lacking a different form of intelligence. Like, I know that I'm book smart and I know that I'm emotionally intelligent. I'm not the best at street smarts. Like, I'm gonna need somebody else to be the thug, because I'm not always the thug, honestly. But like, I realize that. Yeah.
Just know who you are.
Yeah.
Know what you bring.
Yeah. But I think that also, like, it can get deeper, which we'll definitely talk on like other episodes. But like, I think that, like, for example, like my lack of street smarts also is rooted in like my understanding of like people and my awareness of my environment, and also like my social anxiety. So
that she doesn't have.
I just I feel like I'm having social anxiety, but other people don't think that way. I don't know. I'm still discovering that. But anyway,
it's basically like self-connection. Self-connection, because if you don't know which area you're smart in, or which area you might be advanced in, you're not going to know the other areas where you might need to explore or do better in, right? Because everything is a starting point. And I talk about attachment styles all the time with my clients and on my page, on my social medias, but I get a lot of pushback with saying that the anxiously attached is the most emotionally unavailable out of all the attachment styles. And usually women never want to hear that. And I didn't want to hear that either, right? Because I could lean more towards, out of the attachment styles, I can lean more towards anxiously attached when triggered. I've become pretty secure in my self-concept and who I am as I've aged. But when triggered, I could lean more into anxiously attached. And the reason why I teach this is because an anxiously attached person is focusing so heavily on the other person. Okay. It's an element of control because they need the other person to make them feel better. So what we see with anxious attachment is like constantly checking in, constantly rereading texts, constantly being an analysis, asking if you're okay, being the initiator, being the doer, being the fixer, being the one that always shows up, right? You don't want to be forgotten. You don't want to be rejected. You don't want to be abandoned. Oof. And so you overwork and you overfix. And what you're doing as that anxiously attached person is you are growing further and further away from yourself because you're so pressed to get into the face of another person. So in society, you'll hear generalizations like, oh, women are more anxiously attached and a man is more avoidant, right? So avoidant, you'll see people categorize that as like narcissistic, selfish, self-indulgent, self-centered. They're all about themselves. They only care about them. They give me no attention. The polarity between an anxiously attached person and an avoidant, they come together like this because they're both self-disconnected, but the anxiously attached person is so focused on another person that gap within themselves becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and you move further and further away from secure.
I just had a thought as you were speaking about this. Maybe the reason why women are more categorized as the anxiously attached versus the men being the more avoidant. I think that because our attachment styles form in our younger years as we're growing, and as women, as little girls, we're taught to, be mindful of the room, worry about how other people feel, keep quiet to keep the peace, and all these things. I think that when we age and stuff, we're naturally more focused on the other person because that's how we're kind of taught to be.
Conditioned.
More focused on the others. And maybe that's why we're more anxious, like categorized as more anxious. Because, this brings me back to like a funny way to describe this that our boss said to me just the other day about being the indoor cat versus the outdoor cat. And like a lot of like, I'm gonna make a lot of cat references. I'm a cat mom and I have cat brain and I'm not afraid to share that. But anyway, so yeah, indoor cat versus outdoor cat, like men are the outdoor cats. They're the go-getters. They're the ones that like go out in the world and do the thing. And then like women are traditionally the indoor cat, right? And so like now there's this like shift in society, right? Where like which type of cat should you be? Which type of cat is more appropriate? Gender roles are just shifting and it's a little more fluid now, but then it's not and it's weird. But anyway, I think that generally speaking, that could be a reason why women are more considered anxiously attached.
It's definitely that. It's conditioning. Just to, before I don't want to lose my thought, but when you said fluid, keep in mind that attachment styles are actually fluid. So if you were saying, like how I said earlier in my 20s, I was definitely more anxiously attached than secure, right? But when triggered, I can lean towards an anxious attachment because it's fluid. So your attachment style could change at any time, even if you're secure, right? That's the ultimate goal. But something could happen to you in your life where you experience a trauma, you experience a heartbreak, you experience a separation. And then like, it's not like you're starting from scratch because you have that experience, but you could get taken back into that type of mindset again, or those type of behaviors because you're trying to self-soothe. So I just I want you to be aware that if you're figuring out like your way or your journey on like anxious attachment and you fall back into, or you get triggered and you notice certain behaviors are coming up, it's not that you're doing anything wrong. Okay. It's that we're human beings and things are fluid, and the biggest goal that we're trying to get to, the end goal, is to feel better inside. And anxiously attached people are dying to feel soothed, but they're looking at it they're going about it the wrong way because they're looking for that soothing in the external instead of it coming from themselves. Like an avoidantly attached person is self-focused and self-preserved. So their need is always going to come before somebody else's. That's why you perceive them as selfish. But is it really selfish? Like, obviously you can be more emotionally intelligent as an avoidant, but like, is it really selfish to be self-preserved?
I don't think it's selfish to be self-preserved. However, I do think it's selfish when, like, let's say an anxious and an avoidant are in a relationship and the anxious is like, but are you okay? Okay, tell me what's wrong. Tell me what's wrong. And then the avoidant, which I can see why it pushes them away, but the avoidant is like, I'm good. But it's not really good. I think that maybe could be selfish.
Yeah. Well, that's just poor communication, right? That's like emotional intelligence, emotional regulation. Yeah. So that part is, it's not a healthier way of communicating or connecting with someone.
Word.
But generally, the message here is that your connection with yourself will set the tone for your behaviors in any relationship you enter. Absolutely. That's basically it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that, like, if you're anxious, you're kind of like, I don't know, like, you could be like so focused, like, as you said, like, they're emotionally unavailable because they're so focused on getting that validation from the person that maybe the other person can try to be communicative and they're not even receiving that.
They're not.
Maybe because it's not something they want to hear, or like, you know, I'm just thinking of like different ways where like somebody could try to communicate, but you're so anxious that you can't even like hear the words or process what is being said.
Because an anxiously attached person is always chasing the next high, right? The next soothe. It's like a drug addict. You never stop getting high. There's always something that's needed.
What's that Sex in the City quote about men? About men are a drug because they like bring you so high, and then they like put you so low. Right back down. It just brought me to that.
Yeah, no, it's true, and that's what any topic, men, career, money, your own body, like you're just constantly in chasing energy because you can't get it from yourself, and that's what's really sad.
But that definitely starts in the younger years, and it's important to just like understand that, so that way you can kind of just like.
Yeah, the bottom line is safety.
Fix it up, safety. Word. And we have a visitor.
Don't touch the stand, Nola.
But I think that also, like, just to like,
get your cat,
Mama. Say hi to the audience. Hi. I wanted to also like shift it just slightly to speak on like attachment styles and how they kind of influence what our love languages are.
I was just gonna say that.
Oh, okay. We didn't sync.
Yeah, that's perfect. So thinking of like the love languages, I'll share this personally because I was leaning so much into anxiously attachment in my earlier years. Something that was important to me was words of affirmation. I also grew up in a household where I was extremely loved. And so like an ex-boyfriend of mine actually brought this to my attention because the standard was that I was deeply loved by my family. So I wasn't able to see outside of that for myself, right? But an ex-boyfriend of mine was like, if you brought home a napkin, like your family would tell you how good you did or how much you were loved. I'm like, yeah.
Duh. That's a good napkin. I like that napkin.
Exactly. So I grew up with that as my foundation. We talk about generational trauma, but there's also a lot of generational love.
Yeah.
So what I started to need, I guess, from relationships was that words of affirmation, and I wasn't giving it to myself, right? So as an anxiously attached, you kind of chase that love language. So if it's gift giving, you chase that. Love languages are not unhealthy, and you should receive whatever your love language is, right? You and your partner, you and your dynamic, whatever you're in, it's not unhealthy until it becomes unhealthy. Everything is like on a spectrum and there's an extreme to it, right? So for me, it started to be like, well, that's what I need. That's what I need. That's what I need. But I wasn't giving it to myself. I wasn't self-focused. I was so externally focused that I needed to hear things all the time. And now as a 42-year-old woman, that's not even close to being my love language anymore.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that you got caught up in needing those words of affirmation because when your family gave it to you in your younger years, it was like praising you. It was like praising you, but it wasn't it was like from an outside perspective. And what I mean by this is like, for example, we're educators, right? So like, let's say we are giving some type of praise to the student, right? And this is something that I try to be mindful of. Instead of being like, wow, good job, you're so smart, I would be like, wow, good job, you really worked hard to get that answer right. You know, like, it's just like more of like, instead of being like, you're so smart, you're so this, you're so this. So then you're used to getting all these compliments that when you don't get them, you're like, kind of like disheveled. You don't know like basically how to maybe give them to yourself, versus the other way is like, they're affirming that it's coming from you. And that's why, or it's coming from the effort that you put. And that's why it's great or something. I don't know if I'm making sense.
You are making sense, but I don't know if that's exactly it for me, because I had, it was specific with men. So it was more of a relationship based thing that was on the side of being unhealthy for me, like externally.
Okay.
So it wasn't in like career. I mean, of course you would accept a compliment and stuff like that, but it started to become something too needy when it came to a relationship dynamic.
Okay.
But that is true. That is a great way to help a student or a child foster a higher self-concept in themselves, which everything is like full circle moment. A high self-concept teaches you secure attachment, and it teaches you a healthy love language. So that's the basis of what you're trying to build in children, is safety and a high self-concept.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I think also it's just important to know, like, to teach them from a young age, like, whatever happens in your life is up to you in like subtle little ways, right? Like, okay, like you worked really hard to get that good grade, and like certain ways that you form the words, so that way they understand like, okay, if I do this, then I will get this result, versus, oh, I'm just waiting to hear this from somebody, or like, if I don't do good on this test, that means I'm dumb, versus I didn't do good on this test because I didn't apply the effort and try hard enough to get that. You know what I'm saying?
You talk a lot about if then in our IEP meetings, right? So it's very similar.
Yeah. What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
You talk about the if then visuals for students. If I do this, then.
Oh yeah. First then boards. I'm like, if then, what you talking about? First then boards. Yeah, like first do this and then this happens,
but it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So you teach them, if you do this, look at the trajectory of it.
Yeah.
It's consequential thinking,
Absolutely.
which as adults, not everybody practices consequential thinking.
Because it's easier to blame the world. It's easier, right? When we're like,
it's easier to blame your partner. It's easier to blame your kid, your boss, I don't know, everything outside of you, than it is to say like, how am I participating in my own suffering, or how am I participating in my own success? Those are two questions that you should ask yourself almost daily. And I know that might seem like overkill, so, take that with a grain of salt, but it's important. It's important to be self-aware.
It is. Absolutely. I think that it's just, we're so conditioned in this like microwave cookie cutter culture to just receive things so easily that we don't want to put in the work. We don't want to put in the work in the relationship. Like if we're having a rocky period, it's very easy to just go on Instagram and be like, oh, I like that big booty, or I like those arms. Like, let me like and comment or whatever.
It's like instant gratification.
Yeah, we get instant gratification. So when when these challenges come up, we don't really have the tools to like appropriately handle them. Like life is not meant to be so easy. It's supposed to be hard. Like we're on a constant journey of like learning and evolving, literally to the day that we just are no longer on this earth. And like, I think that like people are always searching for the easy way out, and it ties into like blaming the world, because it's easier to blame the world for the things that are happening to you versus taking the responsibility yourself and having those, again, I say, honest conversations. I just, because I feel like I said that shit like 5 times already, but like it's really so pivotal that you do have these honest conversations and understand that like it's okay that things are hard. It's okay that things are challenging. It's okay that you're maybe having a rocky road in the relationship. That's supposed to happen. It's supposed to be a mirror so you can evolve and you can grow and you can be better for yourself and the person and blah, blah, blah,
But it's also important to like remember that you have a lot of control over one, what you experience, and two, mostly how you perceive it. So if you're going to sit there and you're constantly going to engage in a rhetoric or a mental state of like, this is hard, this is hard, this is hard, this is hard, it's never not going to feel hard. So if you're having a challenging conversation, if you're having, a rough patch in a relationship or whatever, like your perception is going to make it better or worse before you even have that dialogue.
Word.
You step into a room and your energy speaks before you speak, right? Your energy speaks before you talk. It's the same thing about how you perceive whatever you're stepping into. So if you're going to sit there and just be like, everything is hard, everything is a challenge, everything is a struggle, I can't get ahead, like that becomes your inner narrative, and you will not be able to get out of that. And you come for coaching, you come for therapy, you come to mentorship, you vent with your friends, and you're like, I just, everything is just bad. Everything is just piling up. Everything is just getting worse. I can't get out of my own way. And why is that? Why can somebody else get out of their own way with similar situations than you are, similar resources, and you can't? Something in your mind has got to shift. Your mind is the most powerful piece to all of this, because it's like the missing piece out of the puzzle. You control so much of your dynamic, of how you come across to people,
your reality.
Yeah.
Honestly.
It's just, it's really, once you get it, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I hope that like today you see it.
Yeah. I think that whole phrase, like, fake it till you make it, I think it's really funny, because if you think deeper into it, it's like, okay, like, for example, like if we have to present something at work, right? And like, we're super nervous, we don't know what to do, whatever. We don't want to let the people know that, right? So like, we have to kind of like fake it, like, all right, I'm not feeling it, but I'm gonna just act like I'm feeling it. And then eventually when you're acting like you're feeling it, you're just doing it. So you're then like feeling it. And you're like, whoa, like I just did that.
Yeah.
So
we make it bigger. Like we make anticipatory anxiety is real. Like you make it bigger in your head before you actually do it.
Word. We do stand in our own way. We do. I think all of us in some way, shape, or form have done that before. And I think that's, easily relatable. But I think it is a constant journey and it's constant work. And it's not really linear. It's like kind of zigzag and all over the place. And
one thing, like, I want you to take this with you is, I know that people who are listening to this have done a lot of self-work, have done a lot of like soul searching and deep dives into who they are. And I want to remind you that if you're working on attachment styles, anxiety, avoidance, love languages, all of these mental health perspectives, and you feel that sometimes like your work is not paying off, or you still have these, like, we'll call them demons, or like negative mindsets that keep dragging you back, this is a reminder that your brain loves to keep you safe. And safety is not always healthy. It turns to toxicity. So your little anxious attachment style when you were younger, your brain, if it's not acclimated to security, is going to want to drag you back to your anxious attachment style because it feels at home. Just because something feels at home doesn't mean that it's successful. So if you're used to closing people out when you're overwhelmed, or when you're sad, or when you're stressed, or when you don't want to have hard conversations, or you're used to being the one that's constantly needing to check in, like tracking their partner, all of these things, like on top of someone, your brain is going to use that as your default safety. It's your job to create a new story and a new narrative to let your brain know that where you want it to be, so we'll use secure as an example, is the goal, and that's now its new sense of safety. And the way that you do that is through repetition. So anytime you get dragged back into the anxious or avoidant, you say to yourself, hey, listen, like, we're okay and secure. I'm okay to put my phone down and not track him. I'm okay to have a difficult conversation. I'm not going to die, right? I'm not going to die if I express my feelings here. I'm good. You have to drag yourself back into your new story. And the more you do that, the more your brain is like, hey, I feel safe here. Hey, she's teaching me that I'm safe. I'm secure. I'm safe. And you do that over and over again. And that becomes your new lifestyle. So that's how you break a habit. That's how you shift a story. And that's how you change your reality. It's through repetition and landing and embodying safety.
Clocking it.
I'm done yapping.
And just to close out, I think this was a really great conversation. Just to close this out, I just want to say that it is our job and it is our responsibility to try to do this work to really make ourselves better, because by making ourselves better and able to navigate the world with awareness, we essentially contribute to making the world better and helping other people also be aware. So do the work, make yourself better to make the world better.
Yeah.
Have a great day, y'all. See you on the next
Bye,
episode.
Guys.